Let's have a good time in Bible study tonight. Father, we thank you for allowing us to gather in your name. Thank you for each and every one, Lord, that has taken the busy time of their life to be with us and to share with us tonight. I pray for your guidance, your leadership. I pray, Lord, that you just open the scriptures to us and make it plain for us, that all of us can just ingest it, make it part of our lives. We give you praise and we thank you, Father, for all you've done. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. All righty. I've got a few PowerPoint slides to show you after we get started here in a little bit. But we're in Daniel chapter 8. We're, of course, going to begin in verse number 1. And let's just read a couple of verses, 2 verses. And Brother Richard, would you like to read for us tonight, or are you able to?
I am.
Okay. If you would read the first 2 verses, and then I'm going to try to show you some slides. Some of them aren't so clear and focused, but I think you'll get a general idea of what we're doing. So the first 2 verses of chapter 8 in Daniel.
In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me Daniel, after that which appeared unto me at the first. And I saw in a vision, and it came to pass when I saw that I was at Shushan in the palace, which is in the province of Elam. And I saw in a vision, and I was by the river of Ulai.
That's good enough. If someone's going to mispronounce it, it'd rather be you than me. It's good enough. I don't think we speak that language anymore.
No, I had enough trouble learning English.
Yeah, me as well, and I'm still learning. All right, Daniel is still in Babylon. Now you get the idea here that the Medes and the Persians have already taken over. They haven't taken over quite yet. It's in the last year of Belshazzar's reign, and that's the one that saw the handwriting on the wall in previous chapters. Remember, this isn't all in chronological order, so it has a little bit of an explanation to go with it, so we know where Daniel's at. He's still in Babylon, and he says he has a vision. You see that in verse number 1, and he's in a visionary state. So in verse number 2, he says, I saw in a vision, and it came to pass that I was at Shushan in the palace. Now, Shushan is in Persia. He's carried in the vision. I don't know in the body, out of the body. You can use your imagination there, but I tend to believe that he was just in a vision. I don't tend to believe that he was physically taken there, but in a visionary state, it might as well been an absolute reality. But Shushan is 1,700 miles southwest of Babylon. And what I'm going to attempt to do here is share the screen with you. And if something happens, if something goes bonkers, please exit and just come back in. I'm going to try this. I don't have a lot of confidence in the electronics, but we're going to try this. So here we go. And right here. There we go. Is everybody still on board?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, I can see you over to the right side. All right, I'm going to go to another slide here. There we go. And he is in Iraq, right here near Baghdad, in this area here, and he's like 1,700 miles southwest, going towards Iran, going southwest actually, or let's see, was it southwest? 1,700 miles southwest, so it would be down this area, 1,700 miles in Persia. So let me see if this other map would show any different. It doesn't actually show Shushan. I got these together to show you that when the empire of the Greeks is divided, and it is divided in this fashion, a great portion of it here. Can you see my mouse moving around?
Yes.
Okay, good. This is the portion, the greater portion of the empire of the Greeks. And here we go up here, and this would be Thrace, in other words, the area of Turkey, modern day Turkey. And over here, Cassandra, the general Cassandra, he will take the, and this is Greece. Cassandra, yeah, Cassandra. All right, yeah, Cassandra. This is Greece. So there's 1, 2, 3, and the fourth one is down here in Egypt. You don't pronounce the P, it is pronounced Ptolemy. But in our first 2 verses, let's go back to this one. In our first 2 verses, he's in probably Baghdad in this area. He's 1,700 miles southwest, so probably somewhere right down in here would be Shushan, the palace. I've got one more slide here I'll share with you. It's not as clear. I don't really appreciate it not being clear, but I can't really help it. This is also a division of the Greek Empire after Alexander the Great dies. And we're going to get into this, but I wanted to show you this. This is Greece over here. This is Thrace right here. And going down in here is Ptolemy into Egypt. And this is the greater area. And I believe this area includes Syria. And that's going to be pretty important as we go along. So just to give you an idea of where we're talking, Greece right up in here. This is Thrace, known as Turkey nowadays. This area here is going to be very, very important. This is modern day Syria. This is modern day Syria. And right down in here, lower would be where Persia, probably over in Iran as well. And this is where Babylon, Babylon is in this area close. All right, I'm going to exit here. It's not a real good map, but at least I had something. Stopping the share. Okay, we're back. So he is southwest, 1,700 miles. He's carried in a visionary state southwest to Shushan, the palace. So we're down to verse number 3. And let's see, I want you to read 3, 4. Read verses 3 and 4, Brother Richard.
All right. Then I lifted up my eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram which had 2 horns. And the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beasts might stand before him, neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand. But he did according to his will and became great.
Okay, let's stop right there for a minute. Who is the ram with the 2 horns, one higher than the other? Now remember, the only empire that was explained to Daniel when he saw the vision of that big statue, the head of gold, the body of silver, the abdomen of brass, and then the legs of iron, feet, iron and clay. The only one explained, he said to Nebuchadnezzar, "Thou art the head of gold." Nothing else was explained. Now he begins to get explanation. And in a little bit, we're going to hear from Michael, the archangel, and it will give him definitive explanation. But I can explain it to you because, of course, we've read ahead a little bit of what we're talking about. So the ram with the 2 horns, one higher than the other, are the Medes and the Persians, the body, upper body of silver. We saw in another animal vision it was called a bear that had two legs longer than the other. And that was telling us that one is greater than the other. Now, the Persian Empire was stronger than the Median Empire. They were combined, but one was stronger than the other. And here it is explained not as a bear rising up on one side, but as a ram that had two horns and one was greater than the other. So we're down in the body of silver, and the Persians are the greater of the empire. And so he rules without contest for a time. Does someone have a question about where we are or what in the world we're talking about? I'll do my best. Anybody have a question? But we are talking about the Medes and the Persians right now. And the greater horn is Persia. The lesser horn are the Medes. And they conquer Babylon on that night when Belshazzar saw the handwriting on the wall, and they come under the gates and stormed the city and took it without contest. Yes, Brother Bob?
Okay, I know the Persians are still around, right?
Yes.
Who are the Medes?
Well, they're mixed in an area over there in the Middle East. Whether they acknowledge themselves as the Medes, you will hear people call themselves Persian or Chaldean. They will tell. I've seen it on Family Feud. Family gets on there, we're Chaldeans. And I thought, my goodness, we're talking Bible here. Sure enough, there's people that, and I think these people were Christian folks, but they said, we're Chaldean. They come from that area of the Medes and the Persian. The Median Empire, you don't hear it anymore, but they're on the map in that area to the east, as I was showing. Another question. All right. Let's read two more verses, Brother Richard, verses 5 and 6. Well, one minute. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Sister, my wife, she said that I explained verse 4. Well, it's simply talking in verse 4 that he pushed to the west, to the north, to the south. It was a world empire. Babylon was taken over, and they took over the whole empire, and they expanded, and no one could deal with this guy. And it wasn't one particular person, but it was a combo rulership of empires of the Medes and the Persians. All right, let's see. Let's do verses 5 and 6. Any comments or questions so far? All right, here we go, verses 5 and 6.
And as I was considering, behold, an he-goat from the west on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. And he came to the ram that had two horns, which I had seen standing by the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power.
All right, let's stop there a minute. So we have a conflict between the ram, which we've been talking about, and along comes a goat with a notable or big horn on his head. This goat represents the Grecian Empire, and in particular, the notable horn is Alexander the Great. It's going to be explained a little later in the chapter, but I'm going to tell you now so you get it, in your mind. You start solidifying that this is the conflict, and it's historical, that happened between Alexander the Great and the Medes and the Persians. And he's talked about the goat being fast. And remember, when it was explained to Daniel in animal form before, it was a leopard. A leopard moves fast, very stealthy, and is very quick. But now it's a goat that moves so fast he barely touches the ground. And the one horn that is notable is Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great conquered the whole known world by the time he was 30 years old. And he only lived another 3 years. He died of something. Maybe my wife, the nurse, can explain what he died of, but we know he died of marsh fever and alcoholism. Okay, she doesn't know marsh fever. I do not know it. It was a fever, and it was exasperated, or however you say that word. Exacerbated. I'm glad I have an English helper here. Exacerbated. I can't even say it, but you know what I'm talking about, by alcoholism. I'll let her say it. She's going to say it one more time. There you go. Remember that word and lock it in, because I can't say it. He died at 33. And the time frame we're talking about, if I can remember this much, is about 336 BC, about 330 years before Christ. So you kind of get this locked into your mind, the time frame and who we're talking about. And it is notable that the ram was the Medes and the Persians, and on their money we have found the inscription of a ram. And on the inscription of the Greek Empire was the goat. Now, Daniel is getting all this information before these empires ever came to power. It's just absolutely staggering, the detail that God shared with Daniel. And that's why the study of Daniel is so important as we study Revelation to find out who the Antichrist is and when this is going to happen. We get the confidence from Daniel's presentation here that he is getting something from God. And later we're going to find out what area of the country over there that the Antichrist will come from. And that's, we have great confidence in Daniel's prophecy, because all of these things just lined up historically, and we can just about pinpoint the region that this man is going to come from. Do you have any questions or comments? Right now, Alexander the Great is taking over the Medes and the Persians. The goat is conquering the ram. Any questions or comments? Okay. Let's see. Did we get to verse number 6 yet?
No.
Okay.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Okay, well, let me just read it one more time so I get it straight in my head as we go forward. And he came to the ram that had 2 horns, that's the Medes and the Persians, which I had seen standing by the river Ulai, or whatever Richard said, and ran unto him in the fury of his power. So I've read some historical recordings about Alexander the Great. I mean, he had a great standing army, thousands and thousands and thousands. My question is, with all of this manpower and a cavalry riding horses, how did they feed themselves? Because that's one of the great logistic problems with moving a large army into an area. You know, nowadays we have jets that deliver food to the troops, MREs, and all of this kind of thing. They can drop a lot of food in a short amount of time. But when these armies went to do battle, and an army does march on its stomach, don't be misled. They have to feed these people. So this was a logistical problem. I really don't know how it was solved, but it was solved somehow, probably pillaging along the way. That's probably how it was, because you can only carry so much food. They probably pillaged the towns and the cities they went through to feed the troops. All right, any question so far or a comment? All right, so let's read verses 7 through 8.
And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with, now I'm not sure if it's choler or choler, against him, and smote the ram, and brake his two horns. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him. But he cast down to the ground, he cast him down to the ground, and stamped upon him. And there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of heaven.
All right. Now you've already seen this on the maps, but let me explain it a little bit. Alexander the Great, the notable horn is broken because he dies. And there is a dispute as to who is going to lead in Alexander's place. Their resolution that they come up with was to divide the Grecian Empire into 4 areas that were to be dominated and ruled by the 4 major generals in Alexander's army. And so I showed you the 4 divisions, one to the west, up northwest was Greece itself. And then over just a little bit to the east was Thrace or Turkey. And then to the very south was Ptolemy or Egypt. And then all of that area to the east, the greater area, was taken over by Seleucus. He took Syria. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, as we study, we're going to find out, I think a little later on in this chapter, and especially in chapter 11, that Daniel is given information that the Antichrist, who will be the last Gentile ruler, he comes out of the area of Syria. And Syria is a large area nowadays. It's a pretty big country. But he's going to, I believe myself, I mean, don't hold me to it when we get to heaven and he came out of just a little beyond the border. No, I believe he's going to come out of the area of Syria. Does anybody have a question about what we've covered so far?
I was just trying to figure out what I guess it's choler.
I think it'd be pronounced collar or choler.
Right. According to what I'm seeing on the website here, in medieval science and medicine, it was one of the 4 bodily humors identified with bile and believed to be associated with a peevish or irascible temperament. Yeah. Also called yellow bile.
Yeah. Doesn't sound real good.
No, I don't.
If you're talking about it, you know somebody's mad. Yeah, that's true. Cindy, yes.
I'm lost. Who will come out of Syria?
The Antichrist.
Antichrist.
We haven't got there yet. I was just giving you a heads up.
Okay.
That's just a heads up. I didn't mean to confuse anybody. I guess I'm excited about it.
Yeah, it won't take much to confuse me, that's for sure.
That's all right.
Yep, okay.
Brother Bob.
Oh.
You're confused too. Okay. We all get that way. All right. And none could deliver the ram out of the hand of the goat. That's verse number 7. Now let's read verses 8 and 9. We're just going to take this at a couple of bites, couple of verses at a bite. Go ahead, brother Richard.
Okay. Start with verse 8 again. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of heaven.
Okay.
And out of one of them came forth a little horn.
Okay, stop right there. Stop right there for just a second. I want you to notice this. Out of one of them. Remember, we showed you the divisions of the Grecian Empire divided up into the 4 generals. Here, the scripture is telling you that out of one of those areas is coming a notable horn. Remember this phrase. The notable horn is in the future, not right here for this time, but in the future will be the notable horn, and that is Antichrist. Whenever you see this phrase, the notable horn. All right, just start with verse 9 and read it through. I'm sorry I had stopped you, but I wanted to make an impression on you right there.
No, that's all right. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great toward the south and toward the east and toward the pleasant land.
All right. The pleasant land is Israel, Palestine. That's the pleasant land. And whether you know it or not, I know a lot of pictures we see coming out of Israel. It looks very arid and desert-like. I've never been there. I plan on being there for 1,000 years, but I have never been there in this life. But they do have areas that are very fertile and well irrigated. I mean, it's been blessed by God. So don't think that it is just arid and desert and full of horned toads and lizards. That's not the whole land of Israel. Here it is called the pleasant land. All right. So we're talking about the little horn, and later it will be called a notable horn. All right. Let's read verses 10 and 11.
And it waxed great, even to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the host of the stars to the ground and stamped upon them. Yea, he magnified himself, even to the prince of the host. And by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down.
All right. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but the whole time frame just changed. We were talking about Alexander the Great. And then we find out now that this little horn, we're talking about events that are future to us. That's how prophecy can work. And you've got to understand, and Gabriel the angel is going to tell us some of this in just a little bit, but I'm kind of giving you a heads up. The notable or the little horn is Antichrist. It comes out of the old Grecian Empire, and in particular, out of Syria. This we know just from study in Revelation, and as I have read ahead, and Daniel, of course, I'm trying to give you a heads up as we go. Now we're talking future events because Antichrist has not been revealed yet, though he is alive. How do I know he's alive? Because the whole countdown and time frame for end times began in 1948 when Israel became a nation. That man was probably alive and young in 1948, and he will be any moment. He may be revealed probably right after the rapture. He will be a full-grown man, probably involved in politics and in military acumen. He will know how to be a soldier, and he's alive right now. So this little horn, later called notable horn, is alive and ready to be revealed. But this is futuristic. When we're talking about this event here of he magnifies himself. Let me just read verse 10 to you again. And this little horn waxed great even to the host of heaven, and is cast down some of the host of the stars to the ground and stamped them. In other words, he's a tyrant. He's a dictator. He is a oligarch, a socialist. He takes over, a total rebel. And as Richard was talking about, caller, vile. He is very dictatorial, and he rules. As we have studied in Revelation, he comes in on a white horse, but he soon shifts horses and gets on the red horse, and he rules with a rod of iron. And he takes territory by force, and he magnifies himself even to the prince of the host. The prince of the host is Jesus. He is God, and he tries to be God, and he sets himself up in the temple, a statue to be worshiped. We have found this in the book of Revelation, and here we see the correlation in the book of Daniel. Now, in my study, I have found out, for instance, that Isaiah focuses on Christ and the millennial kingdom. But Daniel, he focuses on what is given him, of course, but he focuses on this notable horn, the Antichrist, not Christ, but the Antichrist, and where he comes from. And he comes out of the old Grecian Empire in the area of Syria. And he does this. The daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. So he sets himself up in a temple in Jerusalem that he will have built, and he does away with the normal sacrifice, and he makes people worship his image, the image of Antichrist. And that is done with the help of the false prophet as well, that we studied in Revelation. These two books go hand in hand. Somebody has to have a question. Somebody has to be a little bit lost. Brother Bob is just floating out there in the ocean. But if I can answer, if you got a question, please just ask, and I'll do my best to reel you back into the boat.
Well, my memory retention is not as great as it used to be. So I'm just, when you're talking about the horns and then splitting off and then there's offshoot, I'm kind of following you, but
Well,
it is a little confusing.
If you're kind of following, you're doing good. You're doing good. This is a lot to take in.
So when they say a horn or a ram or something like that, that's just a figure of speech. It's not really a ram. It's really supposed to be a person, but this is how they're talking about it.
Exactly. Exactly. You're catching on real good.
Woohoo! Yeah.
You are. The Lord is showing him a vision of these animals doing these things. And you're right. It's actually people and empires clashing. So the he-goat is the Greeks, and they destroy the Medes and the Persians, which is the ram with the two horns and one bigger than the other. Exactly. Very, very, you're catching on. Anybody else? Sister Patricia, you got a question? I know you're smiling there. I don't know if I lost you.
I don't.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. We're doing good. All right. I'm going to keep track of the time here. I don't want to go too fast. Okay. So he magnifies himself in the temple, verse 11, and takes the place of God. We saw he comes against the prince of the host. That's the Lord. And the sacrifice is taken away, and the sanctuary was cast down. Well, he defies. Here's something that I found in my studies this week. And maybe you can study it out. Maybe it's of interest to you. But the temple that Antichrist is going to inhabit has not yet been built, though materials have been gathered already for the building of it. And he's going to build it in a good gesture toward the Jews. He will build this temple. But you see, he is going to greatly defile this temple because he sets up his idol worship in there. Now, I had always been under the impression, and I don't know why, it's just because I didn't understand everything, that the Lord would cleanse this temple and he would sit in there. But I'm beginning to understand, and this is just me, but I believe he's going to completely destroy that temple and set up a brand new one, which he can do in a moment of time, because the temple spoken of by Ezekiel, the millennial temple, and I think you'll find it in Ezekiel chapter 47, I found out that the measurements for that temple are enormous. The temple for the millennial reign of Christ is, get ready, get a hold of yourself, the temple that will be built will be 1 mile square. Just the temple. Just the temple. It won't even go on the Temple Mount area that is there now. And how does this happen? Well, here, I did know this. When Jesus comes back for the millennial reign, and he destroys the armies of Antichrist in the valley of Megiddo, his foot touches down on the Mount of Olives, and a total cleaving of the Mount of Olives toward the east and the west, and I believe the north and the south, and then a river begins to flow and heals the desert and heals the Dead Sea. There is a total change of typography. In other words, the mountains and the plains and the hills and the valleys are moved mightily. And it is done. Now that I'm beginning to understand it, this gigantic temple is going to be built on the area that he levels. I don't believe he's going to use the old desecrated temple that the Antichrist builds. He's building a brand new one, and you'll find it in Ezekiel chapter 47. It's mighty, it is large. And those in the know that know how to convert those measurements in Ezekiel 47 say it is 1 mile square. Imagine a building 1 mile long and 1 mile wide. And that's just the building, not the area around it, I don't believe. I think it is just the building. Massive. How long will it take the Lord to build it? Well, he built the universe just by speaking it. So nothing is difficult with God. But this is something that I just came to fully appreciate. And you can believe what you want. You can believe that he cleans up the old temple, though I'm beginning to think that the millennial temple is much, much bigger than what the Antichrist, and anyway, his temple is going to be desecrated. Any questions so far? All righty. What verse did we leave off with, Brother Richard?
We read through 11.
Okay. Please read 12 through 14, and that takes us up to the interpretation that'll be given by Michael, the archangel. 12 through 14.
And a host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression. And it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint say unto that certain saint which spake, how long shall the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot? And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed.
Okay, now, I probably should have waited to give you my dissertation on the sanctuary till we read this, but Antichrist doesn't desecrate the temple till the middle of the 7 years. I think everybody understands that. He doesn't start requiring worship till 3.5 years in. Well, 3.5 years, let's see, how many months is that? 42
18.
months.
Yeah, 42 months.
42 months. Now, so from the middle of the 3.5 years to the end, when Jesus comes back, is 42 months. This time frame here, 2,300 days, is long after Jesus returns. Not just coming right out and telling you that, but it's the truth. What the scripture is telling you, there is quite a bit of time after Antichrist is thrown down for the sanctuary to be cleansed. This is where I was getting my understanding that they were going to use the old sanctuary. I think the whole thing is going to be wiped out, cleansed, and a brand new one built where Jesus levels the land for that gigantic sanctuary for the millennial reign. Now, you don't have to take that to the bank, but I think it makes biblical sense. I believe it does make sense, because there is a time of cleansing, and I just don't see the Lord sending in people to wash down the walls with Clorox. I think this is going to be a real cleansing. Oftentimes when God talks about cleansing things, he uses fire. I don't know. I'm not trying to read things into the word, but often it's with fire, or it's a ceremonial cleansing like you'll find way back in the book of Leviticus. But it makes sense to me to think Jesus is going to build something brand new. I will tell you this, that the temple that Antichrist set in will be totally cleansed, if not entirely rebuilt. Anybody have any questions or comment?
I have a question.
Yes.
In one of my study thing, it says 2,300 days refers to the time between Antiochus, who something like that, pollution of the temple, and the Maccabees cleansing of it.
Okay, that is Antichos Epiphanes.
Antichos. Okay.
Antichos Epiphanes, and this was done during the 400 years between the Old Testament and the New Testament. And a Jewish group, and I think they were of the Pharisee sect, but they were called the Maccabees, and they were led by a man whose nickname was the Hammer. And the Hammer fought back against Antichos Epiphanes. I believe they were of Assyrian origin. And he went into the temple in Jerusalem between the Old and the New Testament, and he offered a pig on the altar and totally defiled the temple. But that was just a type of what's going to happen with the real Antichrist. And the way we know that he was just a type and not the actual Antichrist is, well, he never encountered Christ. He never battled Christ. This is just a type of Antichrist. But the real Antichrist will do battle with Jesus at the Battle of Armageddon. And the temple will be entirely cleansed and probably just totally renovated by Christ himself. But Antichos Epiphanes is an interesting character, and you'll find him in historical books. And probably, I've never read the book of Maccabees. It's historical. You'll find it in certain Bibles have the Apocrypha in them, the apocryphal books. And Maccabees is one of them. I think like the Catholic Bible may have the book of Maccabees in it. And there's nothing wrong with reading those books as long as you know that they are not part of the Bible. They are historical, and they're fine to read as historical books. But you'll find in there the Hammer defeating Antichos Epiphanes, and they destroy them. It's a good read. How about another question? That was good. I'm glad we brought him up. He put pig gravy, so to speak, on the altar, and he paid dearly for it. The Hammer got a hold of his troops. Anyone else?
The study notes in the Bible that I'm using talks about this period of time with Antichos, where he outlawed the Jewish religion and burned to Jerusalem and killed multitudes of Jews.
Yeah.
And everything. And then it says on December 16th of 167 BC, he offered a sow on the altar outside the temple. And this was an ultimate sacrilege to the Jews.
Oh, yeah.
This began the period known as the Maccabean Revolt. And then after 3 years of fighting, the Jews were able to restore the temple worship in late 164 BC. And his notes, the notes on this are keeping it all kind of in that area of time that they didn't have. I don't see them being able to open their minds enough to visualize further down the road.
Yeah.
That we're looking at.
Yeah. Well, it is without, I do believe that Antichos Epiphanes was a type of Antichrist, but of course he couldn't be because the Antichrist has not been revealed yet.
Right.
Paul said he hadn't been revealed yet. He didn't have a battle with Christ, but he is an interesting character in that Maccabean revolt. The Jews rose up and took their temple back, took their land back. It was a battle. I'm preaching this Sunday, and part of my message is that freedom doesn't come without a fight.
Ain't that the truth?
Freedom does not come without a fight. And and when you talk about freedom, also, not just freedom for a nation, but freedom for people isn't true freedom without some restraint. You can't just have anybody doing anything. You know, we're not going to go to our next door neighbor and take their car because I feel like taking their car. So I don't have that. I don't want that kind of freedom. There is no freedom also without restraint. So rules and laws apply to a land that is free. I sit in my home here without somebody breaking in because there's laws and there's a certain amount of restraint in people's hearts that they just won't barge in and take it by force because they know they're going to pay. And here, this just came to my mind. This is free. The Second Amendment, it wasn't written so I could go hunting. It was written so I could defend myself against a tyrannical government.
That's a fact.
Colonizers, they went hunting every day. They didn't need Second Amendment saying they could go kill a partridge or a deer. They didn't need that. Second Amendment was written for you and I to protect ourselves against something going wrong. That's just part of the Constitution. I don't think there's any conflict or anything to fear there. That's just part of the Constitution. And if you interpret it any other way, you're interpreting things into it. Because, you know, we could always go hunting with a bow and arrow, but well, that's for another night. Anybody else have another question or a comment? Because I'm going to stop here because the interpretation is going to be given by the mighty angel Gabriel. And I don't know, or Michael. Let's see. Yeah, it's Michael. Let's find his name here.
I think it's Gabriel.
Oh, okay.
This
I
is the
said
first
Michael.
mention of the messenger Gabriel in the Bible.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, it is Gabriel.
What verse do you have there?
16.
Okay. Okay, Gabriel. Gabriel. He seems to be a messenger angel. He pronounces things like when Jesus was to be born, Gabriel came to Mary, and I believe he also came to her cousin Elizabeth and said that John the Baptist was in the womb of her cousin, and also talked about Jesus. So he's like the messenger. And here he's given a message. So I want to save from 15. We're going to finish the chapter next week, but I want to save that for next week. Anybody have a question or a comment? Okay. What I'm going to do now is stop the recording. We're going to hear the lady tell us that it's stopped.